Some people like to go to work and some people don't. Some people don't like it for various reasons. But what if you find your workplace to be hostile or threatening? Well, that can take your work dynamic to a whole different level, Tim.
Yes, it can. And more and more people are apparently saying that it is not a fun place to be when it comes to being at work. And an analyst on communication skills and the author of The Old School Advantage, Timeless Tools for Every Generation. We say hello once again to Jim Whiddon right here on Memphis Morning News. Hello, Jim. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
Oh, it's my pleasure to be with you, Tim. Karen?
Let's talk about what you define as hostile or threatening, because there can be plenty of reasons someone doesn't like to go to work, but when you start using words like hostile, that takes on kind of a different interpretation or different meaning, I would imagine.
Well, it does. I mean, there's the classic passive-aggressive. Those are perhaps the most difficult to deal with. There's others that are just overt. They're, sarcastic, or they're demanding, or they give you short periods of time to get your work done. Just, they try to apply pressures in various ways. And it's all about maintaining control. They usually are folks that have a confidence problem themselves. And the way they compensate is trying to make it more difficult on those around them. Unfortunately, and particularly, their direct reports.
And in that case, that means it is an issue on a daily basis, not every couple of weeks or, on the, biweekly meetings or whatever. That it seems like that can be an added stressor out there. Now, if it is your direct supervisor, what should you do if you feel like you have a legitimate beef regarding this?
Yeah, I kind of call this bully triage, because what you've got to do above everything else is stay calm and remain professional, regardless of whether the bully is doing that or if the bully has rank on you, so to speak, they're a supervisor. You still have to remain calm and professional. There's an old proverb that says a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. And so that really applies here. And you can ask questions. Never forget, we teach this all over the country. Even in Asia, we've had conversations about this, and it works over there as well. When you're in trouble or when you see something escalating or moving in a direction that is not healthy, ask questions, because questions bring everybody down to a level where they have to concentrate, and they naturally calm down for just a moment. And probably one of the best forms of questions you can ask in a bullying situation is, what do you mean by that? Or can you tell me more? You just do it in a calm way. Please expand on that for me, because I want to do it right. So by concentrating the bully on what's going on as well, it also buys you some time to know what to say next or to do next.
Again, repeat one of those phrases, because that's a great idea, especially if you feel like you're being bullied by your boss. Because who hasn't felt bullied by their boss at some point? Their boss may just be doing what they're doing, but you as an employee feel like you're getting, suckered into doing something you're not paid to do, or you're getting forced to fill a gap when someone's been let go. Everybody feels a little bullied, whether it's officially hostile bullying or not. What are those phrases again you use so you sound like you're caring about what they say, whether you mean you do or not?
Right. Yeah, the core question is, what do you mean by that? Now, that one may be come across as a little abrasive, so other forms are, can you tell me more about that? Or please expand on that for me, because I want to make sure I do this right.
I like that. Please expand on that. Please expand on that for me.
Yeah. And also, at some point you may have to report abusive behavior. Now, if you just don't want to go in and tattle or, just blurt it out to somebody that's their boss, there's some subtle ways to do that. Go in and ask somebody that's in charge and say, hey, I was wondering, have y'all ever done a 360 feedback appraisal in this company, or maybe an anonymous climate survey? And what you're saying loud and clear, if the manager has any sense at all, is, we've got some trouble over in my department, and I'm not here to tell you exactly what that is, but I think it might be a good idea to look into some of these tools that have been created so that we can have the best workplace environment ever. But you can do it subtly by asking those questions. Again, questions are golden in almost any situation.
Hey, and Jim Whiddon's joining us on Memphis Morning News. He's an author and an analyst on communication skills. Hey, I just got a text here. Somebody asked me, documenting, always a good idea? Question mark.
I think so. Yeah, that is a good idea. Unfortunately, it may create some real kerfuffles down the road, but it's better to document than not to.
Okay. All right.
That makes me smile, because I said something to my son the other day who's 14. I said, you always do that. He goes, give me an example. I'm like, I should have documented that. And so what a great idea to do anything like that at work if you feel like it's becoming a pattern of some kind.
Right, absolutely. And remember, this is a tight work market, career market. So there's opportunities out there. Don't stay somewhere just because you think you can't get another job. Start looking around, but at the same time, use some of these techniques. I mean, there's some preventative things you can do. In the first interview, you can say, how would you describe the company's culture or values? And maybe you can kind of see some of these ahead of time. May I meet the person I'll be working with or reporting to? So you can get some clues there. That's another conversation, but I thought I'd just throw that out there.
And just kind of following to another conversation, a quick question, true or false, in your view, is it easier to get a job when you have a job? You always hear that.
Oh, absolutely. Well, because you're not under pressure, so you're less likely to choke, so to speak, and do something you wouldn't otherwise do. It's better, and I think people want to hire people, frankly, that are already in a position because they're showing a pattern of success even as they speak. Presumably.
Cool.
All right. Hey, Jim, thanks so much for joining us on Memphis Morning News. Jim Whiddon, author and workplace analyst. We appreciate it and hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thank you so much.
You too.
We're talking about hostility in the workplace, not along the same lines, but along different lines. The American workplace, grueling, stressful, surprisingly hostile. So there was a survey, in-depth survey, 3,066 U.S. workers by the RAND Corporation, Harvard Medical School, and the University of California, that says workplace bullies come in all shapes and sizes. I want to bring on an analyst on communication skills, author of The Old School Advantage, Timeless Tools for Every Generation, Jim Whiddon. Jim, good morning.
Good morning, Boom Daddy. How are you?
I'm good. So you see this survey. What's the best way to handle a workplace bully?
Well, you need to stay calm, remain professional above all else. Don't lose it. Let them lose it if they want to, but if you can just stay calm, that's going to be a tremendous help. There's an old proverb that says a soft answer turns away wrath. And so that's the first thing. Then you ask questions. Anytime we ask questions, that brings the conversation tension down because the bully in this case, if you ask them a question, has to concentrate on the answer. And so it's a good interrupter in a situation where you might have some bullying going on. The basic form of the question you might want to ask is, what do you mean by that? Now, that might come across as aggressive, so some other softer ways to say that is, can you tell me more? Or please expand on that for me so that I can understand. In other words, you're trying to comply with whatever they're complaining about or yelling at you about or whatever it might be. But yet you're asking a question to bring things down so that you might be able to get out of the situation in a calm way. Now, if there's abuse, you've got to report that. I mean, there's a tight market out there. People are having trouble finding good people. So you don't have to stay there. You can find another job, a better job where you don't have to put up with the bullying.
All right, Jim, let me take it to another level. What if the bully's your boss?
Well, that makes it more difficult.
A little bit, right?
Yeah. Right, and you can't go, directly at them in that case. So here's what you do. There are large companies that do this anyway. They have a whistleblower protection system, but most companies don't. And so you can go to a supervisor, another person on the management team, not your boss, and say, have you ever thought about doing a 360 feedback appraisal or maybe an anonymous client or climate survey? And the manager that you asked that to has to be thinking, that's a strange request. We've never had that before.
Mm-hmm.
What's behind that? So in other words, it's a way where you're not directly tattling or creating a situation that's going to be even worse, but you are saying to the management, look, this is a shot over the bow. There's something going on in our department you need to know about. I'm not in a position to tell you about it directly. That's why I'm asking you these questions about 360 feedback appraisals, et cetera. Now, if they actually do those appraisals, which are available on the internet, there's companies that do those, you can solve a lot of problems by doing those. So it would actually be a good thing in the long run for the entire company.
Talking right now to Jim Whiddon. He's the author of The Old School Advantage, Timeless Tools for Every Generation, analyst on communication schools. Jim, how does an employee know when it's time to report bullying to HR? I mean, we said, you just mentioned, there's different forms of bullying. How do you know when it is? But when you think it rises to that level, when's it time to pull the trigger?
That's a great question. Author Daniel Pink did some work on this in one of his books called Drive. The idea is what drives employees, and so it's common, it's ubiquitous across all employment circles that people want autonomy, they want mastery, and they want purpose. Now, those are just words that Pink used to say. Autonomy means I want to be in flow. In other words, I want to do that thing in my work that makes me happy, makes me feel like I'm contributing. And so if you're analyzing your own workplace and you don't feel those kinds of feelings, you don't feel like you're in flow, as he defines it, and then you don't have mastery. In other words, you don't, or an opportunity for mastery. You don't have opportunities to grow in your profession and as a person. And then if you're not part of a purpose bigger than yourself, in other words, you're just doing this day-to-day work, and it's not really part of a bigger mission in your opinion, those are three clues that say I need to at least start looking around before, because I'm not being fulfilled, and I'm not meeting my expectations for myself, and I'm not being the most I can be, to use a cliche. And so those are the things you want to think about.
Jim, last question I have for you. In a society where everybody is offended by every damn little thing anymore, what in your mind constitutes a workplace bully? Because what might be a bully to you may not be a bully to somebody else, or, everybody is so freaking thin-skinned anymore. How would you describe a workplace bully?
Well, there's, Fast Company did an article and had 5 classifications of them, and we don't have time to go through those. But essentially, you've got to ask questions at the first interview about culture. Describe this company's culture for me. What are your values? Because, Bloom Daddy, not every environment is so PC-laden. I mean, there are environments out there that have level heads. They understand what you can and can't talk about, but at the same time, they're not so thin-skinned that you're always walking around on eggshells. That's the worst. That's the worst feeling. You've done something wrong at home, and you know it, and you're walking around on eggshells until you can get it resolved. The same thing happens at work, and it is just absolutely the most miserable way to live. So, finding that environment, the old, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Find out that stuff up front in the interview process. And that means you may have to leave your current job and go find another interview process, but do it right this time.
All right, Jim, appreciate the advice. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right, that's analyst on communication skills, author of The Old School Advantage, Timeless Tools for Every Generation, Jim Whiddon.
1320, morning wake up here on WILS. I got a kick over this past weekend looking through one of the cartoons. There's still great cartoons that are done editorially here in this country. Whether you get the print edition or not, you still have the benefit of seeing them, and I hope it doesn't become a lost art form. This one, the cartoon, it's in Crane's Detroit business. And in the backdrop, it says big corporate HR department, kind of caricature here. And there's a guy sitting at his desk with his laptop open, and he says to his compatriot, why can't we recruit young professionals? We're offering flexible hours, beanbag chairs, and unlimited trail mix. What more can they want? And she turns around and says, training, career options, higher wages, ... It made me laugh because some things, the more things change, the more they stay the same. But is that really true with workplace environment? Is it more hostile these days, more stressful than it's ever been before? Some are saying yes. There is a new in-depth study of more than 3,000 American workers by the Rand Corporation, Harvard Medical School, and UCLA, and it says the workplace bullies and the stresses are coming in all shapes and sizes these days. Jim Whiddon is here, analyst on communication skills in the workplace and author of The Old School Advantage, Timeless Tools for Every Generation. Jim, good morning.
Good morning, Dave. Good to be with you.
Good to have you back here again. Do you find the workplace to be more, we got all these open concept workplaces and team meetings and gatherings and free food at work and free everything and leave when you want, come in when you want. How could that be hostile or threatening?
Well, yeah, I think in many ways they've made it more comfortable, maybe a little too comfortable. And, happiness is the gap between our expectations and our reality. It's not always that's why you can go to a very poor country in Central America, and the people just seem as happy as they can be in their communities. It's because their expectations are lower and they're being met. So, it's not how much better can we make the workplace with trail mix and flex hours and all that kind of thing. It really goes beyond that. How are people acting towards each other? That's where the hostility comes in.
Yeah, I'm laughing at that because there's a nugget of truth to that editorial cartoon, too, which is
absolutely.
that all the beanbag chairs in the world aren't going to make up if you aren't paying a decent wage or at least a market wage out there. And millennials at some point they do want to get paid. Young people want to get paid, but you don't want to get bullied around in the workplace either from coworkers or employers. Your boss. That's enough. If that happens, is your advice usually, you got to move on, you got to go. You can push back so far, but if there's a culture that allows that where you're working, you should probably look for a different place, shouldn't you?
Well, it's a tight job market from the standpoint of employers can't find qualified people. So there's a lot of opportunities out there if you're not in a situation you enjoy. But, I think, first of all, you have to deal with an issue. So if you're in the moment, in a hostile environment, someone is not treating you correctly. Above all else, you've got to stay calm and remain professional. Mm-hmm. You have to be the common denominator there. There's an old proverb that says a soft answer turns away wrath. And so if you can stay calm and professional, even though a supervisor is losing it, you've got to concentrate on that. And then you've got to ask questions. Chapter 4 in my book, The Old School Advantage, talks about the art of asking questions. When you ask a question, then it calms the room down and it focuses everyone, in this case particularly the bully, has to make an answer. And the question can be as simple as this. Tell me what you mean by that. Now, do this in a tone that it doesn't make things worse, or you could use another form. Can you tell me more about what you're expecting? Please expand on that for me. You don't have to go into detail, but I want to do it right. These kinds of questions can bring things down. But in the end, if they're still abusive, you've got to report that abusive behavior, and you may not be able to do it directly. So that's where you maybe go to management and say, hey, how about a 360 feedback appraisal for our department? Or have you ever considered an anonymous climate survey? They'll get the message without you being the tattletale or jeopardizing the relationship with your supervisor even further. And you may be doing that company, you probably would be doing that company a huge favor by simply suggesting those programs that are easy to find on the internet or from somebody like me that can come in and help you. So.
Because you do that. What you do is more than working on the latest new icebreaker, right? I mean, you're trying to get companies.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, you're trying to get companies to have some cohesion and not just teamwork on paper. That sounds good, but real teamwork by people who, the best teams. I mean, they may not want to go hang with each other 24/7, but while they're putting in 6 or 8 or 12 or 14 hours, you want to be around other people that you want to be around. I mean, I've always thought about that in this world, and if you don't, life's too short.
Absolutely. I'm a big football fan. College football is starting up this week. The reason Alabama is who they are is because their leadership knows how to run a team. And whoever is in 100th place of the Division I college football teams this year, there'll be a reason for that as well. Transpose those rankings to business. It's the same thing. Teamwork. Who are the better coaches and managers? This is vital to success.
Well, yeah, and you can also transplant that mindset to the small. People say, well, that's just because they're the biggest. Go to the smaller divisions, and the same thing applies to the smaller division where it's apples to apples, and you'll see the team at the top regularly. You'll see the same kind of principles involved, just on a smaller scale. I don't think I'm off base on that.
I don't either. I like the baseball reference. There's your one for the day. Yeah,
so that's it's there. Are you buying the study though? When it says 1/5 find their workplace hostile, that seems like that not just are you happy or you unhappy, but actually hostile or threatening. That's a high number to me. It seems high.
Well, the reason I'm buying is because definitions are not that clear. So hostile to one person is not hostile to another. And so I think we're just becoming more sensitive. And so when we hear the word hostile, they say, yeah, that's hostile. When in fact they don't understand what hostile is. They haven't seen hostile in their life, right? So
I get it. So maybe it all depends on your context and perspective and what you've been through anecdotally. I get that. Jim Whiddon, he's the author of The Old School Advantage: Timeless Tools for every generation. Where do we get the book, Jim?
Yes, the oldschooladvantage.com, and Amazon might get it to you same day. They're pretty good at that.
No, yeah, not too bad. Jim, thanks for being here. Appreciate very much.
My pleasure.